Hello and welcome to Higher Results, where workforce, business, and talent intersect. I'm Melody Reagan, the CEO of Eye to Eye Workforce and your host. On Higher Results, we cover all things about your workforce throughout the life cycle of your workforce, as well as you and your career. And today's show I'm very excited about is all about the office of today: location, 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 design, design, design. I have some awesome guests, but before we jump into that, let's talk a little bit about location, location, location. Rents throughout the United States are on the rise significantly. Vacancy rates are dropping like crazy. Look at this coming into 2018. Retail vacancy rates, 11%. We're probably getting close to 5% in terms of industrial vacancies. Now, let's talk about design, 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 and what's happening with location. Here's what's happening with location. We invest in our workers. We have a business. We want people to be highly productive. What creates a really good work environment? We're having discussions, open space. Should we have offices anymore? Should we be working remotely? How do we get collaboration? How do we get that creativity? These are the things that we're dealing with as businesses today. And I'm going to share with you, our workers are changing, and here's some great statistics. 64% of the workers in America feel workplace design and environment are equally important. And these are the stats on the elements that matter to them. Natural lighting, artwork and creativity, easily configurable furniture and spaces, and ensuring that they have a collaborative space are things that are mattering. And one of the elements that are coming up is, how do we create that great environment for our workers? So I'm going to introduce my two fabulous guests today. These are people who I have very cherished relationships with in our community, who are held in high esteem for the quality of work that they provide. And I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself. I'm going to start with you, Meredith. Meredith Gershberg owns a design firm, and it is called Design Resource Group. Look for the square logo, just so you know, Design Resource Group. So Meredith, tell us a bit about you.
My firm is really a furniture dealership or a furniture wholesaler. So I work with clients on their commercial furniture needs, which is all-encompassing to everything but a home. So I work on projects for banks to restaurants and healthcare, and help my customers figure out all their furniture needs.
Fantastic. And then with us also is Tanner Mason. Tanner owns a commercial real estate firm known as Benchmark Commercial. Tanner, tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, Tanner Mason. I'm the managing broker of Benchmark Commercial, and we represent users of commercial real estate, so primarily office and industrial space. We have a boutique firm here in Denver, Colorado, with a great team of 6 people.
Yeah, and by the way, both of you have amazing reputations. All right, so let's talk about, where do we start? I'm a business, so I've gone into business. I'm ready to get an office. So what should I be considering when I think about my office location and my office design? So first I need to find a location, Tanner. What should I be considering?
A few things we see quite often. One, and it sounds fairly straightforward, but have a business plan. And believe it or not, we see that a lot where somebody wants to go find space. What's going to happen is a landlord, knowing it's a startup, they're going to ask for a business plan. Also know what your financials look like, because that's going to come into play as well. If you're asking for the landlord to spend money, that's going to come into play. But and where do you want to be depends on your recruiting. If you need to recruit people, which might mean public transportation, might mean what kind of image do you want, or are your clients coming to you or are you going to them? So those are some of the initial things to think about.
By the way, with that, when I'm thinking about the location and where people are at, and you talked about a business plan, what comes to my mind is, what size space should I be considering?
Sure.
If I'm going to grow really rapidly, I've watched so many businesses, they aren't paying attention to their growth and they end up getting smaller offices than they need for their future growth, which is a bit of a problem. So that's the other component to a business plan. All right, so I'm finding the space, I'm considering where I want my place to be for my workers, for my clients, for my growth. So I've got that. Now what, Meredith? What should I be considering?
Well, a budget is a really good place to start. I laugh because most of my clients have say we don't know what our budget is. And so I try to help them figure out what style of furniture they're attracted to. And then perhaps I call it typical. So if the average office is a L or a U, I'll do a quick layout and price it in 3 different styles and have a budget or based on that layout. And then that helps us move forward on the rest of the project. But it would be great if they had a budget.
So what does that mean when you say an L design?
A shape of the desk for a private office is typically an L, a desk with a return, or a U with a desk, a bridge, and a credenza in the back. So people are going, or businesses are going paperless, and so I am seeing some offices can get away with less filing. So maybe they're okay with less desk and storage.
So, I am going to throw this in as a question. A lot of business owners, we obviously, when we're growing our business and the financials, we always try to do the lowdown to as much as we can ourselves. What is the benefit of using a commercial real estate broker? Why should I do that?
Good question. We actually were talking about this. We have a mutual friend, client of mine, and this gentleman actually went through the process by himself without a broker, and he ended up was going to spend $50,000 that he wasn't planning on. So, brokers know what the market's doing. They know what to push for and when with the negotiations. And what we also do is build the leverage between multiple options. And that's really where you get a lot of the value that we bring. But this gentleman ended up switching gears. Thanks to Meredith, I ended up helping him out.
Yeah. And Tanner was the right person.
And so we went through the process and helped him out, negotiated a deal that he was thrilled with, and I know he's happy in his new spot. So,
Something I think people misunderstand about commercial real estate brokers. If I'm the business owner, I'm not paying you. I don't pay you for services. So why not use them? And the other thing is, I'm not knowledgeable of all of the contract components. I've watched people get themselves hung up where all of a sudden the market is on the increase and their rates are going to go up with it versus being locked in, or vice versa, or they're in a share of a percentage of revenues, or who has to pay for what. And if they had a commercial real estate broker, they would have somebody who's in there paying attention to what they need, because you really do work on behalf of the business owner, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll add to that, Melody, a few other things that we do is bring the team together. So if we need an architect, if we need a general contractor, furniture, cabling, all that. So, building the team, we have those resources and can make that a lot easier for our client.
By the way, it's a big deal and it's a big investment, particularly with the way real estate is going. And it is important with your location with workers. Okay, so Meredith, same question. Why would I bring somebody in to help me with getting my furniture, setting up my office appropriately, et cetera? What's the value?
Well, in order to procure commercial furniture, you have to buy from someone. There's not online websites for certain manufacturers. So having a dealer helps you navigate through thousands of manufacturers to get down to the 2 or 3 or 10 that will have all the products for your space, starting with lounge and entryway, maybe a reception desk, your boardroom, breakout rooms, your cubicles, your offices. There's so many parts and pieces that a proposal could easily be 30 pages long when you see all the details. So you need someone that's going to help you do all of the space planning to ensure that the furniture is going to fit in the office upon arrival. And then if there are punch or missing items or something came in damaged, someone that's going to service you and be there for the life of your ownership.
So I'm going to ask you, what do you mean by commercial furniture?
There are some large manufacturers, for example, Herman Miller, Steelcase, Knoll, just to name a few. They are franchise brands. And then there are thousands of other manufacturers that do a great job too. I love OFS Brands, and they're a family-owned company out of Indiana. And so in order to buy furniture from them, you have to have a dealer involved.
Yeah.
You can't buy direct from them.
By the way, I remember, this is showing my age, you guys remember when the Herman Miller chairs were just so super popular? Everybody had to have them when I was in corporate, and at the time, I'm not even going to say the year, they were so expensive.
They still are.
Oh, they're fantastic chairs, but very expensive. Okay, so let's talk about another one, rent or buy. when should I rent or buy in terms of a facility, and when should I rent or buy in terms of furniture? So, Tanner, when should I rent or when should I buy?
Sure.
What's that trade-off?
First of all, I'm a proponent of owning your real estate if possible, but it's not for everybody. We have a couple of kind of rules of thumb that we use in our firm. That one is, if you don't think you can buy a space and be in it for 10 years, then maybe it's not for you. So in other words, if you're a established service company, maybe a CPA firm, a law firm, where you're not going up and down with the market cycles as much, you're probably a good candidate to purchase. But if you're a startup tech company and you have 20 people and you might go to 100, inherently you're going to have to buy for 100 or more. So doesn't make as much sense. Most people, about 95% or so we say, or so we hear, of companies lease their space. And so there's much more flexibility in that, but it just depends on the user.
Yeah, and by the way, one of the things with real estate going up, if you are owning it, your value is going up. But, this is also a misconception. It's so funny. I've had many conversations with people. Some people think if they buy real estate, they can never lose money. Well, no, you can.
Sure you can.
It can go up and it can go down. All right, well, what do you think? Should I rent or buy my furniture? What drives that decision?
I think with furniture, more leasing is the term that we hear versus buying. I hardly get into leasing. People want to buy their furniture and also be able to have it show depreciation value as part of the business on their taxes. So I think in 15 years, I've worked with one customer that did leasing, and it was a very big project.
So, and by the way, that's actually an important point as to where it shows up for me financially, right? Same thing with what I'm doing with real estate. In terms of getting, so if I am leasing, and there are components, there are capital investments that I can make. So how does that play out for me financially?
On the lease side?
Yeah.
Well, you're right. So it depends talk to your CPA, right? They're the professionals that can help you guide which way you should go. And also the depreciation and the tax benefits of purchasing are why I'm a proponent of it, typically. And then you're right, there are sometimes companies will put in some of their own money for the tenant improvement dollars.
Exactly.
So they do some of that, so that all can be written off, and usually it's
That's,
the term of the lease.
yeah.
So it's pretty quickly. Now on a purchase, you can also do accelerated depreciation as well for a lot of the fixtures in the building. So you can take a lot of that the first couple of years. So there are benefits to both. It just depends on your situation. But I think the biggest thing we go back to is what's right for the company. Sometimes people get so focused on what they might want to do individually that it's not the right decision for the company. So you got to look at both aspects.
Yeah, what I think that we brought up here, and thank you for that, is when you're making a decision, what's really important is you may be spending X dollars, but the actual net impact to you is far less. So pay attention and look at it financially, get with your accountant, because you're making a big decision. All right, well, I want to ask you guys, I'm going to jump to something a little bit different. I know it's one of those, surprise, it's like, where are you going, Melody? But what are some common mistakes that people make when they're doing design and setting up their offices, Meredith? What are things like, oh, I've seen this and you really don't want to do, or pay attention to this?
Sure. Thinking about how everyone interacts. Are they heavy phone users? And you do need taller division between individuals, or are they heavy just on the computer and very little phone, so little noise bouncing around? That's definitely an example. And then sometimes feeling rushed. I would say that's one of the biggest things. If a customer says we're in a rush, I say, well, let's think about this. You're going to own this furniture for maybe 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
So yes, you should have called me 2 months ago and we would have been off to a better start, but let's make sure you get the furniture that you want to have, that functions properly for you, that looks the way you want it to, and you're going to own it a long time. So you sit at a folding table for a couple more weeks. Better than having something that just doesn't feel right to you.
Oh, that's a great thought, and just give it a little bit of time. I want to ask you, and then I want you to come back to common mistakes, but before we do that, we're going into more shared work environments. We're getting rid of the walls. What are you seeing as trends in office design these days?
So it's been about 5 years that we've seen panel heights in cubicles or workstations come down or just go away completely. It's not for everyone. Like I mentioned, if you're a heavy phone user company and you need those panels with the fabric to help absorb sound. So we're seeing panels perhaps taken away from areas that they shouldn't have been, and now companies are going back in and doing various techniques to help with sound masking or sound absorption so that spaces feel good.
Yeah.
So it's not so echoey. Like, this room is great. You guys knew what you were doing.
Exactly.
So that's definitely a trend that is, has its ups and downs. And then also seeing less large boardrooms, like the $20,000 conference table is now being broken up into multiple smaller rooms for maybe 2 to 6 people to meet. Again, because cubicles or workstations have been made smaller over the years, down to benching is a type of product that some people have at their office, and you can't get a lot done on a 60-inch wide desk, so you need a place to go meet with someone.
Exactly. Well, you know what? Are you finding a trend with regard to people having permanently assigned desks versus just open shared desks? What are you seeing?
So for a company where they know their employees are there pretty much 40, 50 hours a week, they have an assigned desk. What we're seeing now are maybe sales managers or VPs who have multiple desks across the country. Maybe they have multiple offices. So if they're only in their Denver office a few days out of a month, then that office is being wasted. So we're seeing rooms designed to be used while that senior employee is traveling.
So it's just a little more where they're embracing a little more of that transient workforce. The time I have to tell you, and this also, I'm just so feeling my age today. Years ago, when this came into vogue, I actually lived in England, and the companies in England were trying where they were bringing the panel heights down so that people could talk to each other, and then doing the virtual desk where you would go and you'd have a little card area that had your stuff in it, and you'd roll it to the appropriate desk. And I can tell you, and this was even with BT was the company at the time, and then British Gas was doing it as well. But they had, their workers were just so disturbed where they would come into work and not have enough space to roll their filing cabinet to. I mean, it just did not
To the
work
next
well.
location.
It was
Well,
like,
you can't
if you
take
don't pay attention, right?
You can't take a concept that worked for someone else and just throw it into your environment.
Yes.
It has to fit your culture. So it sounds like it was not quite the right fit that people really, if they'd asked them, wanted like a home base every day.
By the way, exactly. And I love that. And I think it's the same thing, your culture and your brand. So your office environment needs to hit that. Okay, so let's talk
Can
about...
I add on that?
Yeah,
So
please.
I've also heard and
Yeah.
seen some companies that have these mobile workstations where you
Yeah.
roll your pedestal around. Is people are territorial. We like our space,
Right.
and
Our
so
friends.
I've heard
Yeah.
I've heard people either come in early to make sure they can stake out their place,
Yeah.
or if they get there and somebody else is in their desk, they feel slighted. So it's really an interesting culture shift in making sure the communication is there with the company to make sure that's going to be the right solution.
By the way, excellent point. And I also think making sure you have the right capacity. So whatever you're setting up, making sure that you have the capacity with transient and permanent workers, and then just handling that collaboration, having appropriate collaboration spaces. So what are some common mistakes that people make with real estate and making their office selected?
Sure. Actually, I have a whole list here. For
Yeah.
you to get to. But the number one mistake we see is and you, Meredith, you had alluded to it, is not enough time. Some companies think that the longer you wait, especially if you're going to stay in your space and do a renewal, let's say, that you actually are building leverage, but it's quite the opposite. You want to, for most companies, you want 6 to 12 months lead time before your lease expiration to go out and look at the options, because if you think about it and backing into it, you might have to do a build out, that's 3 months at least, and then you negotiate the lease, that's 1 to 2 months. Before that, you negotiate the deal points. So that's 6
Great
months
point.
real fast. Plus, you need backups. What happens if that falls apart? So the more time that you have, the better. And if you're a big company, if you're 10, 20, 50, 100,000 feet, it's a 2-year process easily. Other things we see are realizing your total occupancy costs. Right now in this market, downtown districts are tight. So parking gets more expensive, factoring in the parking costs in Denver, That could add as much as $8 per square foot onto your lease rate. It's just the parking for your employees.
Great point.
I pay
Great point.
$150 a month to park my car.
See, great point. Great point.
Yep. And then there's, on the industrial side, what about trash removal? What about janitorial? What about utilities? Make sure you understand everything that you're paying for and what you're going to be paying for.
By the way, that just points out there are costs that are you getting the full picture of what those costs are for you? Are you paying attention? Because you might think you have a really good deal on real estate, and then lo and behold, all these incremental charges, it's really not so great, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing in furniture and what you're taking care of and getting it put together. And I love that you said, do it early. Do it early, because moving an office or moving your team members can be so disruptive, but your space can make a difference in how your employees and workers co-create and produce for you. So, all right, well, you guys, this has been a fantastic conversation. I would love for each of you to give us an ending bit of advice, if you would. So, Meredith, if there was one thing and somebody had just a few seconds with you, what would you tell them, please remember, for your design and your furniture selection?
Oh, that's tough. Just one thing. Make sure that the space fits you and your company and your employees, and don't feel the need to have the Google effect. Don't throw a slide in your office and a ping pong table if you're not going to let your employees take a break and use the ping pong table. So make sure that your space, the design, the look, the colors, the feel matches your business structure to retain and attract employees.
Excellent point. So it's got to match you, your culture, your brand. I love that. Well said. Tanner?
Interesting, mine's similar, which is know who you are as a company. So what that means is know, what is your culture? What do you want it to look like? Who you're going to attract, recruit. Again, are your visitors coming to you? Are you going to them? And trust your professionals. Trust your real estate broker, trust your attorney, trust your CPA, and if you don't, find them, because they are going to help you limit your exposure and your risks and make sure you have a happy place to work for the next 5+ years.
By the way, I'm going to throw my one last one in because this was important to me. It ties with trusting your professionals. As business owners, we really do try to do everything ourselves. This is so outside of my element. It's not, I'm good at my businesses, but to know how to pick a location, make sure I'm covering all those things, get a good contract, get a good deal on furniture, I am not an expert in that. So trust your professionals, but also reach out and use them. That would be, don't think you can do this all on your own. So, well, you guys, this has been fantastic. Another great session. Thank you so much for being with us. If you missed the show, don't worry about it. You can get us on i2i Workforce /hire results. You can also see us on IPTV. And here's the deal. We're on every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Please join us again. Watch us on facebook.com /Innovation Pavilion or facebook.com Hire Results. Thanks so much for being with us. And I always love this. I'll see you on the internet.